Hey everyone, today we're doing a commander dive, but because it's Friday, we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to do a commander that is well known and has been out there for a long time, but we're going to talk about how I built it and how I approach these things and my deck building strategies and things like that. So you'll get a little bit more out of this one than you would with a normal dive, but let's get into it. This is Commander Tax, and I'm out. Alright, today we're talking about the deck that I'm currently building, which is Yarok the Desecrated. 2, a black, a green, and a blue elemental horde. Death touch lifelink, 3/5. And I'm building it because it's got this ability that says if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So what is this? This is Panharmonicon in the command zone. So a lot of people approach this as they're just going to use landfalls and abuse the crap out of those. Me, I have a few pet cards I put in this deck that really, the pet cards are what guided me towards this commander, not the other way around. So I found a combo that I really like, and then I found a commander that works with it. So when you're actually looking to build a commander deck, you don't always have to find the commander first. If you find a card that you just love, try to find a commander that synergizes with it, and then other support for the card that you really like that does similar things. And then you have a commander deck. You have a basis, a foundation to start something. So let's get into the first category and let's talk about that pet card. Double Trouble. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the combo that made me want to build this deck, right? There's one card in specifically, but we're going to talk about a whole group of cards here so that you guys can get the full picture. So the combo starts with a card called Railway Brawler. Let's see. What is Railway Brawler? He is 3 and 2 green pips. He's got plot, 3 and a green pip, and basically plot means you pay the plot cost, you exile it, and then you can play it for free on a future turn. So what does Railway Brawler do? Well, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is its power, okay? So I got to thinking, man, how cool would this card be if we could increase the number of times it triggered? Well, that's where Yarok comes in. So Yarok is going to do an ETB effect an additional time. Same thing, we're going to add all of our doublers that we can find. We have Virtue of Knowledge, which was recently came out in Eldraine. It's got the same thing. We've got Panharmonicon. It's an artifact. It's got the same thing. And so that's 1, 2, 3, 4 total triggers for Railway Brawler. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and add in another piece here, Deep Fathom Echo. So Deep Fathom Echo is 2, a green and a blue. Merfolk Spirit, it's a 4/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, it explores, which is awesome. But then when you may have it become a copy of another creature you control until end of turn. So at the beginning of combat, this is going to turn into another creature. We're going to turn this into Railway Brawler. So we have about 4 or 5 clones. This one's just my favorite. But here's the idea now. So now we have 4 triggers on 2 different creatures. Okay. So if we play, let's just say Scoot Swarm, right? Let's do the math here. All right. It's a 1/1. It's going to trigger 4 times twice. So a total of 8 times, right? So you got to remember, this is going to be exponential. So first time it's going to go from a 1/1 to a 2/2, from a 2/2 to a 4/4, from a 4/4 to an 8/8, an 8/8 to a 16/16, from 16/16 to a 32/32, 32/32 to 64, 64, 64, 64 to a 128, and then 128 to a, let me think here. I can't do math that high, guys. Let's figure it out here. 128 times 2 is 256, 256. So that's a 1/1. This is the dream. Obviously, you're not going to get all this. But if you just have Yarok and Railway and Deep Fathom, like, it's still going to be quite a bit. But the idea of being able to put out a creature that's 256, 256 is pretty nuts. And that's really what led me down this path of creating a deck for this commander. So the other effect I have in this category is going to be the Conjurer's Closet, which is 5 pips, or not 5 pips, it's 5 generic mana. It's an artifact, and that reads, at the beginning of your end step, you may exile a target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So this is going to be any creature that we have that has an ETB effect, we can basically blink it. So it's going to get exiled and then it's going to come back. So you're going to get not one trigger, but if you have one of these doublers out, now you're going to get 2 triggers and so on and so forth. So we can do this multiple times. Obviously, it doesn't work with Railway Brawler because you lose counters when you blink it, but you can see the potential here. So let's talk about how I built out the support for this deck now with the next category. Everything else. All right, so in this category, we went ahead and jumped to this one because you can see some of the other ETB effects I have in here. And we're going to start off with Displacer Kitten. So it says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So this is just like the Conjurer's Closet, except you don't have to wait till end of turn. And so it's just another way to blink ETBs. Let's look at what are those ETBs. So the first one is Rune Scarred Demon. It's 5 and 2 black pips. It's a demon 6/6 flyer. But when it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So basically, this is going to allow us, with a doubling effect and with the blink effects, to basically continually search for that combo that we really want to pull off. And if you think about it this way, it's just another piece of the combo because it lets us get those pieces. All right, next up we have Shriekmaw. It is 4 and a black. This is an old card. It's got Feared, and it's got an Evoke that says you can just pay 2 if you just want the effect. But otherwise, it's a 3/2, and then when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. So this is removal on a stick. So if we blink this or double the effect, it's way better than it otherwise would be, and it kind of justifies paying for the creature over using the evoke cost. A lot of people use this just as a removal, and then later in the game, if they just need a creature, you can play it for 5, so it just adds flexibility. But we're going to want to actually play this for its actual cost. Next up, we have Shark to Crab. So this is kind of a pet card. It's 2, a green and a blue, and it says whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on Shark to Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So this is nice because it's just a decent body. It's well statted. It's not a great card, but it works really well for us here because we can blink it and remove its counters, and then you could adapt it again. So if you really just need to lock something down, you can do it. But also, if you have Railway Brawler in play, when you blink this, it's going to get the counters so you don't have to pay the adapt cost. Next up, we have Gruff Triplets. I think I put this in every green deck, but this is also another combo I really love, is that you do this with Railway Brawler and Yarok, right? So you're going to trigger an additional time. So instead of getting 2, you're going to get 4. And rather than being 3 3s, they're now all 6 6s. So this is a win con for this deck. If you can get Yarok, Railway, and Gruff Triplets, like it's really good. Unless they have a board wipe, they really can't deal with it. These got trample, and they're just going to keep getting bigger. And then when they die, because of Yarok, it's actually going to trigger an additional time, right? And the fact that you can blink this and do it again, like you can see how this is kind of nuts. This is very different though. Like this is what I like to do when I'm looking at a commander. Everybody can build the standard Yarok deck. Everybody can go out there and research what that deck is and how it works and build it verbatim how everybody else does it. The thing is, when you bring something like this to a commander table, this is what's going to get people excited. This is what makes playing against decks like this fun, right? You can't do what everybody else does. You have to do something different. Think outside the box. Get creative. That's what people like seeing, and that's what's going to be fun for you to play. I mean, yes, playing a competitive deck and winning is fun, but if you're not one of those people that's really competitive and you like to have a good time, building a deck like this, I feel like has more value for you than just building it the conventional cookie cutter way. You have more fun building it, you're gonna have more fun playing it, and overall it's just going to be a better experience for you. And it's why I love Magic. The flexibility and the ability to play any way you want and build a commander, a different way that nobody's ever thought of. Like that's what it's about for me, is finding new and interesting ways to play the same stuff that everybody else does, and then being able to share it with you guys, right? So finding a deck out there that you haven't heard of, and then showing it to you, and then getting that feedback that says, hey, you know what, like, that's a really good idea, I used it in my own deck. Really, that's what keeps me going and making these videos. So I just want to thank you guys. If you've ever made a comment like that, I appreciate it. And yeah, so that is this category. Let's get to the next one. All right, our next category is Landfall. But it's not quite what you think. So the first card here is a bit of a pet card. It's Baloth Woodcrusher. It's 4 and 2 green pips. It's a beast, and it says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +4/+4, and it gains trample until end of turn. So the whole idea with this is to get multiple landfall triggers. So you're going to get multiple from Yarok, and then you're going to get multiple from the lands that you play. You're going to play things like Terramorphic Expanse. This lets you get 2 lands into play. So if you have Yarok and then you have 2 land triggers, and this is +4 each time, that's going to be 3 times instead of 2. So that's, well, actually that should be 4 times instead of 2 because it's 2 for each land. So that's going to be +16/+16. So this is going to be a 20/20, basically barreling in and attacking your opponents. Just a cool card and a different way to use the landfall trigger, and one that this guy's not getting used anywhere, so I wanted to feature him. Next up, we have Avenger of Zendikar. This is probably in most Yarok decks, but it's just a fun card and a really powerful one. Even though we're trying to have fun, we still want to try and win. It's 5 and 2 green pips. It's an elemental. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. So you're playing kind of a landfall thing a little bit, so you're going to have lots of lands, and you're going to get a bunch of 0/1s. And then every time you play a land, rather than getting +1/+1 with Yarok, you're going to get +1/+1 twice. So there are 2 2s every turn. And additionally, if this sticks out for more than a few turns, you're probably going to win the game. Next up, we have Springheart Nantuko. This is a new card. It's 1 and a green. It's got a bestow cost of 1 and a green. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Like, you can guess where we're putting this. We're putting this on Railway Brawler. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 and a green pip if Springheart Nantuko is attached to a creature you control. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature. So basically, you play a land, you pay 2, you're going to create another Railway Brawler, which is then going to trigger the first Railway Brawler, so it'll come in as a 10/10, and the next time you do it, it's going to come in and it's going to be 5/5, so 10/10 plus. And you can see with Yarok how this just cascades completely out of control and creates giant trampling, reaching rhinos. I love this card, and I love it in this deck. It's going to be so much fun. Next up, we have Maldrotha the Gravetide. It's 3, a black, a green, and a blue. Elemental Avatar, 6/6, and then when you play this, during each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. So this gives us another landfall trigger, and is also going to basically allow us to play some different stuff from our graveyard, just a little bit of recursion, and just a fun card that I wanted to add because I just think Maldrotha is a cool card. Next up, we have Scoot Swarm. This is 2 and a green. We talked about this before. But whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. So basically, if you have 6 more lands, it's just completely, everybody knows this card because it just gets completely out of control. I'm just thinking with Springheart Nantuko attached to this, how crazy that is. And you don't have to wait until you have 6 lands. But then I'm thinking, if you pay the 2 and you have 6 lands, you're already getting a copy, and then you're getting another copy. And like, with Yarok, oh my goodness, like this is crazy. You get this card out and it's so much fun. All right, last up, we've got Omnixilis the Fallen. So we've got to add a little bit of salt here. So this is 3 and 2 black, and it's landfall. When it enters the battlefield, you may have target player lose 3 life. So it's just ticks him for 3, and then you put 3 1/1 counters on Omnixilis the Fallen. So basically, you can go around the table with Yarok and be like, you lose 3 life, you lose 3 life, you lose 3 life, right? It's like, you get a car, you get a car. And you're going to put a whole bunch of 1/1 counters on him, and then you're going to swing in with a giant Omnixilis the Fallen. So moving on, let's talk about Friendly Forest. The first card here is Tribute to the World Tree. It is 3 green pips. We have enough mana fixing, I think, in this probably to pull this off. but 3 green pips is a little tough to do. But it's an enchantment that reads, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 1/1 counters on it. So the way this works is with Yarok, because you're going to get multiple triggers. If you put a 1/1 down, you're going to get 2 1/1 counters, and then it's going to check the power for the second instance, and it's going to be 3. So basically, you're going to draw a card. So every time you play a card, you're going to probably get 2 1/1 counters and a card, or at least a card. And if it's already 3, you're going to get 2 cards. So great card in this deck, and one that should be a lot of fun to play. And you can see the tree in this. It doesn't look like a happy tree though. Maybe it's a friendly tree, but it's just a sad tree. I don't know. Next up, we have Nissa, Ascended Animist. It's 3 and 2 green pips and 2 Phyrexians, so you can pay 4 life. However, it's got completed, which means that if you pay 2 life, it comes in with 2 less loyalty counters on it. You want to try and pay for the whole thing, but if not, it's still a really good Planeswalker in that the first ability lets you get an XX green Phyrexian Horror, where X is its loyalty. So if you have 7 loyalty, you get an 8/8, but even if you just have 5, you're getting a 6/6. So this is a great +1 ability. Even the negative one is awesome. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. And then the ultimate is bonkers. It says, until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 for each forest you control and gain trample. Yes, we're in a 3-color deck, but we have a card that combos with this, and it's the whole reason this is in here. And so this goes back to deck strategy in that, honestly, you don't always have to have every card synergize with every other card. If you just want to put a smaller combo in your deck, you can do it and see how it runs. And you can always take it out later, but if you just want to try it, like, don't hold yourself back. And so here's a perfect example. I've seen this combo played, and I really wanted to give it a try. And since this deck has green, I'm going to try and pull it off. So the next card is Awaken the Woods. It's X and 2 green pips, and it says create X 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. So basically, if you pay 7, you're going to get 5 lands, and then that ultimate gives all your creatures +5/+5 and trample. So really good combo, and one that should be really fun to try and pull off. All right, now we are looking at Bonnie Paul Clear Cutter. It's 3 a green and 2 blue pips, Giant Scout, and then when she enters, she creates Bo, a legendary blue ox creature with this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. So with Yarok, you would get 2 bows, but because Bo is legendary, you have to sack 1. You only get to keep 1, but that's not going to matter here. We'll come to that in a second. But whenever you attack, draw a card, then you may put a land from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. Basically, you're going to draw 2 cards, and then you get to put up to 2 lands onto the battlefield. This is great for Landfall decks, and then on top of that, so like, yeah, bow, you only get to keep 1 bow, but let's say you lose your bow. Well, we have Conjurer's Closet, Displacer Kitten, and a few other blink spells. You can blink this and bring bow back. Really good card for this deck, really synergizes well with what we're trying to do. Next up, we have Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. It is 3 and 2 green pips. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. Non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. So this again works with Nissa, so that basically our Bo, our Bonnie Paul, they're also going to be lands. So it's going to add even more power and toughness to our creatures when we ultimate that Planeswalker. So it's a really cool synergy there, and just kind of like a smaller sub combo, whatever you want to call it, that I've added to this deck that is just a lot of fun. So again, guys, I think that's the key when you're doing deck building, is have fun with it. Have fun, but like also keep in mind what people like to play against. This is a combo that I don't think is particularly salty. I've played against, varying degrees of salt, and I can tell you those salty decks, those aristocrat style decks, for the most part, unless you're a competitive player, are not exactly, at least for me. Everybody's different. Everybody's got those decks they don't like. I don't care for aristocrats because I find it really hard to play against, and it prevents me from being able to do what I want to do. Let's move into the last category here. Salty Crackers. First card is Sire of Stagnation. This is 4 a blue and a black. It's got Devoid, so technically it doesn't have a color, but whenever a land enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, that player exiles the top 2 cards of his or her library, and you draw 2 cards. So this is Landfall for our opponents. There is obviously the downfall that they have to exile something. So Eldrazi have like this whole big mechanic where they are able to play exile cards off opponents' libraries. That's what this is made for. That's not really what we're using it for. We're just using it for the draw and for the saltiness of basically milling our opponents into exile. So a really cool card for this deck. Next up, we have Urtai Resurrected, 2, a blue and a black. It's a flash Phyrexian human wizard, so this means you can play it at instant speed. And then when it enters battlefield, you choose one. You can either counter target spell, activate ability, or triggered ability. Its controller draws a card. Or you can destroy another target creature or planeswalker. Again, its controller draws a card. So this can be salty because basically it's a counter spell on a stick. And because we have a couple ways to blink him, we can actually counter our opponents multiple times, or we can destroy multiple creatures. And then when we play it, we're going to get multiple triggers as well. So we're going to be able to counter spell and also destroy a creature most likely. Next up, we have Agent of Treachery, 5 and 2 blues, human rogue. And when it enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. So we're going to get 2, maybe 3. If we do get 3, then at the beginning of our end step, we're going to draw 3 cards, which is really good. A little salty because we're stealing 3 things from our opponents. Next up, we have Alpha Deathclaw. It's 4, a blue, or 4, a black, and a green lizard mutant. It's a 6/6 menace trample. When it enters the battlefield or becomes monstrous, destroy target permanent. So this is another Shriek Maw kind of effect, except it says permanent instead of creature, which is awesome. And basically we can make it monstrous, or we can just blink it and get, and with Yarok, of course, we're going to get multiple triggers. So great card for this deck. And last but not least, we have Royal Elemental. It's 3 and 3 blue pips, flying, Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain control of target creature. So if we're getting multiple lands and multiple triggers, we're basically going to steal everybody's stuff. So think of it as almost like Dark Realms, you know? So except we're stealing board states instead of graveyards. And yeah, so this is a really fun card for this deck. And that, guys, is the video. I hope you appreciate this different take on a commander dive, looking at an older commander, looking at what I'm doing, and, you know, getting some insight into how I think a little bit. So I really appreciate you swinging by and checking this out. If you could like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Catch you in the next one. Peace.